can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you here. Glad you could join us on this Tuesday. Today is Tuesday evening. Here we are. How you doing? Good. Good. Anyone not doing good? Not doing good? Good, not good, not good. Kind of works that way, huh? Just some days good, some days not good. And then there's our perception of that good or not good, and how much does our view of what's going on change what's going on? Not much at all. And that's the difficulty is, any of you like to try to control things? Fix things, change things, correct things? You spend your whole life trying to do that. And this practice is really about surrendering to present moment and being with life as it arises. And very often what arises is incredibly difficult. And so we become conditioned, and it really becomes just habitual patterns and behaviors to observe something that's going on that we very quickly have an aversion to and say, I don't like this. And then we sit in that discomfort because our mind is over and over and over again telling us we don't like it. And the practice is to observe what's happening and be with it and say, wow, this is it. This is what I get today. This is what I get in this moment. This is what I get in this life. And if we can see each experience as just another moment to practice, it takes away this heavy emotional attachment we have to everything that goes on. And some of our days, the things that challenge us and disturb us are minor. Coffee wasn't made the right way, traffic didn't go how you wanted it to, you don't like the way the shirt looks on you today, little things. And then there are serious things that really matter. Death, loss, pain, extreme trauma. And there's heavy stuff that we face and deal with as well. And the practice for both of these situations is the same. Is to observe it and be with it, and that's often the most difficult thing. So I think for me, one of the most difficult but also beautiful practices on this journey has been to just observe life as it unfolds And it's like you're jumping into a river. And you're just with it. And that's really difficult because we're not used to necessarily doing that. We have this kind of conflict and struggle with ourselves, with others. We don't often want to just jump in the river. So, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for being here. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere, so feel free to just introduce yourself as you are, say hello. Then we get to questions. Be able to chime in there as well. So we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who might be new or joining for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Okay, you'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often helps slide to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're sitting, just relaxing the shoulders, sitting up straight if possible. Hands are on the knees or lap. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect silence. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. letting go of judgments of the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going. Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. The night is young. Most of you won't even make it home before you're disturbed. Right? This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And as I alluded to at the beginning of the evening, the present moment is often very difficult. Too often people use meditation or Buddhist practice as something to run to, like that's going to fix all of their problems. It doesn't fix anything. It makes you become aware of what's going on, so you can then make changes necessary in your life. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this won't fix it. You have to make changes. And that's often very difficult for us. We, for whatever reason, tend to settle and be comfortable in misery. And we just stay there year after year after year. It's a practice of waking up to the present moment and seeing it for what it is, the present moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And that's it. And it doesn't change. We often run from challenges and difficulties. And when we get there, you know what's waiting for us? You're shaking your head. Yes, what's waiting for us? Challenges and difficulties. Yeah. Sometimes the same ones. It's like, anyone ever watched that, I wish I could remember the name. I don't know if it was Wile E. Coyote, but it was a cartoon. And I love this one because it was like, somebody in this room has got to know this. Maybe Roadrunner. Yeah. So this one specifically, it was like the cartoon dude was babysitting and wanted like the cartoon person was babysitting to nap. And then the one cartoon dude got like their foot stepped on and would run really far away to like the top of the mountain and then scream. And then run all the way back down because they didn't want the baby to wake up. Anyone with me here? Anyone seeing this? I know I'm totally crazy, but right? So when I said that, my mind went back to being like 7 or 30 years old and I'm watching cartoons. And that's often what we do. It's like we have this problem, right? So we're going to run out like 12,000 miles away and scream and then like run back. And when we get there, it just goes with us. Every problem we have goes with us everywhere we go. And so this practice is to face it with loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity and to be with these challenges and difficulties because they're not going away anytime soon. Whenever you make it through or completely run away from whatever challenge you're facing right now, there will be another one waiting for you. And it's there to teach us stuff about ourselves, to learn about us. And that's, for me, ultimately what Buddhist practice is about. It's just a mirror. It lets us see our own ignorance, our own greed, our own anger, our own cravings, our own desires, everything that causes us to suffer. My master used to say you could shave your head and put on a robe, it doesn't make you a monk. So the Buddhist teachings on a renunciate path, it's not about being a monk or a nun, it's about understanding what are you holding on to so tightly? What are you so afraid to let go of or move on from? And very often, if we are honest with ourselves about that, then we can kind of break through what's holding us back from just feeling like we're alive. So with that, I'll just pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And for those, again, who are joining virtually, welcome. Thanks for all saying hello here. Feel free to chime in on the chat box if you have a question or anything, and I'll do my best to respond there as well. Nice to see you all here. So we'll spend the rest of our brief time this evening with questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. We'll go from there.
Do you do the virtual show every night?
Do I do a virtual show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about like on the weekend?
Actually, no, I don't. I just love how you call it a virtual show. I really wanted to say yes.
And she's gotta get out that way.
It's funny because when I was walking up the stairs, I said to the crew that was sitting there, I said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the circus. I'm just debating on whether I want to answer your question or just use your question as something to ramble on to. I lead classes twice a week. How's that for an answer? We have Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night is virtual, and then Saturday morning as well. Everything else, Thursday night is here also, but not virtual. So majority of our classes are streamed. Yes. My show you can only catch twice a week.
The ones in the morning?
Saturday morning, Tuesday night. The Monday through Friday 8 a.m. sit is virtual as well as in person, but it's two separate.
Oh, it is virtual as well?
Yeah, go to the website. A lot easier. Yeah. The Monday through Friday is in person as well as virtual.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not like a virtual of people here sitting. It's a separate group that leads it virtually.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I do think of this stuff as a show, though, and that's why I was going to ramble on that, and I will anyways. I think that, like, when we begin to recognize that this practice and the things that we're learning through meditation and looking at Buddhist teachings it is just your everyday life, right? And to me, everyday life is a show. It's a circus. It's like the craziest miracle, magical experience every single second. Like literally, taking out trash is a magical experience. It's incredible. Every little thing is magical. And when we have gratitude and appreciation for all those things, then life is beautiful no matter what's going on. But we too often get wrapped up in our own kind of ways of just complaining about things and appreciating very little and lack of gratitude, But just be grateful to take out trash. That means you have the ability to walk. Or even if you're in a wheelchair, you have ability to move in a wheelchair. You have ability to grab trash. You have ability to consume things that become trash. I'm not going to turn this into a recycling talk, but you understand my point, right? Even just throwing out trash, all the food scraps, all the wasted food. I'm not going to turn this into that either. But there's so many things going on. We think of it as like, it's just trash. But we created that trash from everything that we were fortunate enough to have and to use. So if you begin to see like the beauty in everything you're doing, then everything show, it's one grand magical show. You might as well enjoy the ride because it'll end. Other questions? Yeah.
Is there kind of like a formula you suggest or a recipe, like just how to remind yourself to be more present in practice?
Yeah, so the question of, is there like a formula or recipe of how to remind yourself to be more mindful in your practice? It varies. I think each person is different. One thing that I often share, so for example, someone who wants to have a daily meditation practice but doesn't, which is very often, if there's a room full of people and I say, how many of you have done a meditation? 95% will raise their hand. And then I say, how many of you do it every day? And it goes down to like 2%, right? So very simply, set it in a calendar on your phone. If you get up at 6 a.m., because I'm sure you wake up at 6 a.m. and start everything going, 6:05 to 6:10, meditation. Put it on your phone every day, repeat, never. End never. Put it on repeat and end never. And what this will do is every single day, whatever time, 6 a.m., if you get up at 10 a.m., 15 minutes, get up, brush your teeth, splash water in your face, whatever you got to do, drink your coffee, and then take 5 minutes. But if you put it on your phone, you ever go to a doctor's appointment? How do you know to get there? Phone. You ever have a meeting for work or school or whatever? How do you know to get there? Your phone. Your phone reminds us of everything, except for the things that are habitual patterns and behaviors already. Some healthy, some unhealthy. For example, did you brush your teeth today? Yeah, yesterday?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, probably the same, right? It's not in your phone, is it? You didn't have an alarm that went off that said, brush your teeth, right? You just did it because you've cultivated that habit and pattern your whole life. Since you were little, somebody put this thing in your hand, they're like, do this. And you're like, okay. And then eventually you're like 7 and you're like, oh, wow, I need to do this every day. So there are things that are already habits in our lives and there are things that are not. And we have to create them as habits. So we need the phone as like a parent or an adult putting that toothbrush in our hand. Same thing. We have to train ourselves, unless you can find somebody here to call you every day at 6 a.m. and tell you to sit and meditate, right? So that's one way. Another thing is if you have if you sit at a desk at work or whatever and you have a computer, put a little note on the top of your laptop or, whatever you're working on. Like a physical thing up top there that says, close your eyes and breathe, or, 3 deep breaths, or be kind, whatever it is. We have to kind of dumb it down and make it simple, because being kind and gentle and nice and mindful and compassionate is not what we're used to doing. Most of us. Well, I can't speak for any of you, but I'm speaking for myself, right? I need reminders every single day. Being nice to people is not easy. It's really difficult. So for me, having reminders of all those things are really important. My reminder was just to have a temple, and then I just have to be reminded every second. It's a lot easier that way. A computer probably would have been simpler, but I'm not that smart. Books, read something every day, even if it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Pick up some Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron, any book that's telling you to be kind and compassionate, and read 10 minutes of it a day. Simple things. Is that kind of what you're? Yeah. We have to kind of trick ourselves sometimes, especially when it comes to things that are typically healthy for us or good for us. So, yeah. What else? Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I have a question. So during my meditation, I'm going through a lot of change right now, transitions, which is good. It's uncomfortable, but I don't mind that. But during my meditation, it's the little things about this change that take up a lot of space. That I have to keep on coming back to my breathing. They're probably not, to me, they're little, they're just little tiny things, but I keep on trying to attach to that, and then I come back to my breathing, and it's just like this jumping back and forth. I don't know, do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, I think, whatever we're going through in that moment, that day, that week, that month, whatever is kind of heavy on our minds and our hearts, when we sit down and do a meditation, that's what we're going to sit with. And so, I don't want to suggest that when you sit down and do a meditation, if you're going through something, a lot change right now, a lot of change, that just because you sit down to do a meditation means that that's all going to go away because you decided to meditate. I mean, in reality, the way you just asked your question is exactly the answer as well. It's the recognition of the wandering mind, back to the breath. The recognition of the wandering mind, back to the breath. It is tug of war in your head. And you're always trying to come back to the present moment. So that's ultimately the practice, right? When people sit and, when they say they're like, I was able to empty my mind, clear my mind, I didn't hear the plane that was going overhead, they were just asleep, right? So when you sit and breathe, your mind is going to go 1,000 miles an hour. And all you're doing is training it. You ever trained for anything in your life? Was it easy? No. Training is not easy. Training is challenging, difficult. And what we're now trying to train is the most difficult thing to train, which is our mind. And when we do this, and the more we practice, the benefit isn't even so much in the meditation. And what I mean by that is, you ever been angry about something for 30 years? Anybody in here? You're smiling. You don't even look 30 to be angry for 30 years. How long do we hold on to anger? Too long. Way too long. And that thing you're angry about, when did it happen? Too long ago, right? And here we are still angry at that thing from 30 years ago. This is a very untrained mind. Because that thing that happened 30 years ago. And it doesn't suggest that what happened was good or bad or right or wrong, or, it's not justifying it, it's not excusing it. Can you see without looking what's on the wall behind you right now? Why not? How come you can't see it?
Because I don't have to turn around.
You have to turn around. So now turn around and look at it. Now you can see it. Now turn around and look back. Staying present is the exact same thing as what you just did. It's training the mind to have the ability to choose. When I want to look behind me to what happened 30 years ago, I'll look at it. Maybe I don't want to forget. Maybe I want to continue to learn. Maybe I don't want to make the same stupid mistake, whatever it might be. I want to be able to look at the past, not pretend it didn't exist, not pretend it's not there, not ignore it, not excuse it, not justify it, but look at it and learn from it. But I don't want to spend my entire life there. Because when we spend our entire life exploring the past, how does that typically make you feel? Huh? Miserable?
Miserable.
Now, it'd be totally crazy if we actually looked at good things from our past. And I mean, if that was the case, then looking at the past would be great. But for whatever reason, most people don't sit around and think about all the wonderful things that happened in your past. And the reality is, if you all have the ability to be here on a Tuesday night, you've had a lot of wonderful things happen in your past, whether you want to admit it or focus on it or recognize it or not. Which means we all in this room have tremendous opportunities to look back and be grateful for people and places and things in our lives. Yet we'll pick out the most horrific things to focus on for 6 days and feel miserable because of what happened 30 years ago. This is an example of a very untrained mind. And this is what meditation is doing, is it's training us to say, I'm going to stay present because this is what's happening right now. And it is no different than you looking at this way or you looking that way. The difference is it was really easy for you to turn your head, right? Now can you train your thoughts the same way as you turned your head? So keep doing what you're doing, which is just back to the present moment. Yeah. What else? Questions? Why is it so hard for us to just have gratitude for everything that has happened in our lives?
Where does like that desire to own one's anger, like where does that root from?
Expand a little bit on the desire to own one's anger.
Like
Tell
the
me more.
desire to continually punish the person that we're angry at,
Oh.
hold it. Where is that rooted in? What fear?
So, okay, that was a little, that made more sense. So your question is where does you're holding on to anger towards somebody and you want to know what is that rooted in you?
Yeah. it's
Like,
hard
where's
to
that coming from?
Hold on to it.
Yeah. Anger. Because it's not their anger, it's your anger. You are angry at someone for something. And, to me, what I've learned through Buddhist teachings about anger, and I'm sure you've heard this, but when we hold on to anger, we're the ones who are hurting. Yet at the same time, depending again, and each situation is unique. Maybe you broke somebody's heart 30 years ago and you're angry about it. Like they're over it, they moved on. They're not still losing sleep over it, even though you may hate yourself for it. And then there's other situations where maybe the person we're angry at, they're right next to us. I mean, not literally right next to us, but they're still in our lives. And so we're still holding that anger over them. And then we're literally like torturing them and punishing them for something they did wrong. All they did was be human. They made a mistake. They did something they shouldn't have done. And it impacted you. And you're holding that over them and like torturing them because of it. For me, this practice really starts with self-love, self-compassion, and understanding that, have you ever done anything to hurt someone in the past? Maybe once. I mean, think back like a long time ago when you hurt somebody, right? If you've done something to hurt someone, were you coming from a place of kindness and love and compassion in that moment? Probably not. So when they do things that hurt us, they're also coming from a place that isn't filled with love and kindness and compassion. They're coming from a place of suffering. And as you know, how do we overcome suffering, and what do people who are suffering need? They don't need more suffering. They need love. They need kindness. Because when we're suffering, that's what we need. So it's rooted in your anger. You said fear. To me, I don't sit with feeling like fear is attached to that, other than maybe you're afraid of what it would be like to be free from holding this over somebody. Maybe you're actually afraid of being free, of being liberated from the pain that you're still holding on to. Maybe you've held on to it. Maybe you've held on to it for so long, like it's a security blanket. And it just, I don't know. But the only one that's hurting really the most is you. And this really gets into, forgiveness practice. And very often forgiving people, including ourselves, is tough to do. People make mistakes. They do things they shouldn't do. They harm others. It's what happens. They're human. We are human. And it doesn't make these things that they've done right or okay, or, when we choose to forgive somebody, it doesn't mean we're saying that what they did was good or right or safe or okay. It wasn't. But we're choosing to forgive them very often for ourselves more than anything. Because that pain that we carry around is really heavy. And it weighs on us a lot. Every day, in and out. And imagine how nice it would be to, and I'm sure all of us in this room have somebody that we just don't want to forgive. And we have a million reasons why we don't want to forgive them. And you are convinced those reasons are correct. But imagine, if you actually forgave them. Just in your heart. I'm not saying you have to call them and tell them you forgive them. But imagine in your heart, if you forgave them, what that would feel like. You would be free from that. From holding that over them. And I think we all should be free from that burden. So I don't know if that helps at all, but yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we'll do one more question on that or anything.
Question. So you kind of touched on giving, right? Love, compassion, kindness. Can you maybe touch on receiving?
In what regards? Yes, but just expand that a little bit.
Right. I mean, maybe because you go about your day and you're starting to see gratitude, right? And you go about, trying to be nice, be nicer to people,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that, and trying to basically increase that abundance
Right.
into the world. And I guess is there ever a point where you're like, wait, I gave all of this?
But what about me?
For me?
What about me? Okay. Thank you for that's right. I had a kind of idea that might be where you were going, but that definitely helped. So, couple things about this. In Buddhist practice, there's what's called the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva literally means enlightened beings, and without getting into all that right now, just think of it as like an angel, kind of in a Western context, or just someone who really the Bodhisattva vows to liberate all beings from suffering. Simple, just a simple vow. And so I know all of you woke up this morning and said your entire day is devoted to making sure all beings are free from suffering, right? Isn't that what you all woke up and the first thing you said was, I'm here to liberate all beings from suffering, right? And that started your day, so that's great. Well done. The Bodhisattva practice is to go beyond this idea of a gift a giver or a receiver. It's pretty intense. And so you're actually removing the notion of, well, I've given, so now what do I get? And I didn't in any way take what you said in like this selfish, like, in that regard, but this is literally removing that idea of I've given, so now what about me? The Buddhist teachings, the first thing he said when he said life is dukkha, the first thing he said, life is filled with suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. That's number one. And then the cause of it, the very first cause of suffering is greed. And he said you overcome greed with generosity. So the number one practice is to give, but to give without expecting anything in return. I learned years ago a beautiful practice of never expecting anything from anyone ever. Never expect anything from anyone ever. You just give. I'm sure you've all helped people before. When you help people, how do you feel? Good. Do that always. And don't ever expect anything in return. Now, you'll get stuff in return, but you're just not expecting it. Often like, here every Thursday or any community service you do, we feed people living on the streets every Thursday. And so sometimes people will say that like they literally start doing it because it makes them feel good. And I've had for years people say to me like, is it wrong that I'm doing this practice just because I feel good? I'm like, no, just do the practice, right? You don't not do it just because it makes you feel good. You still go through the practice. But if you can work on not expecting anything. And if you never expect anything, what can happen? You're never what? I think I heard it. Disappointed. Imagine going through life never being disappointed. Wouldn't that be nice? And it doesn't mean like that you're just going to be completely neglected and avoided and never get anything back. But your intention is not that. No gift, no giver, no receiver. Now, I will add to that because this comes up a lot, right? Within relationships, right? Friendships, family, intimate relationships, whatever it might be, that this practice doesn't mean that you should be in a relationship and that the other person is not giving or participating, that you need to stay in it. Because there's unhealthy, toxic dynamics going on there. So this practice isn't about staying in an unhealthy, toxic dynamic. It's recognizing that you don't have to abide in any relationship you don't want to be in. But to constantly expect people to be a certain way is where the real conflict and trouble comes in. Because we can only be who we are and how we are, as are others, And really, I think that the greatest part about giving is what we get is the beautiful ability to give. That's it. So, hope that helps. Yeah. All right, anything else before we close? Okay, we'll join palms. The benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, so before you all head out, our phenomenal Dharma Bum host, Eddie, has a few announcements.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 16 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Almost every night we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks. Thanks all. Have a good night.